Greetings and welcome to another episode of Crew Coffee Convos. And here I am with Jake and Drew. We're excited for our discussion today. Jake, we have two stories kind of jammed in one passage in Mark chapter 5, 21 to 43. Give us an outline of those two stories for us.
Sure. So you see right at the beginning, he goes to the other side, and Jairus is there, and his daughter is really sick, about to die. And on their way to go, for Jesus to go heal his daughter, this lady with the issue of blood touches Jesus, stops the whole parade, and Jairus' daughter ends up dying. So they're both two people in very desperate situations who intersect, cross paths with Jesus.
Yeah, that's something that I think kind of unites these two stories together is these two individuals, Jairus and the woman with the issue of blood, were very desperate. Let's talk about their lives for just a moment. Why were they desperate?
Well, I think of Jairus first. I mean, for him to actually come to Jesus shows that he was desperate because, right, he's a ruler of the synagogue, which means he's rich. He can afford doctors, and he's probably gone to doctors. I mean, I'm just assuming. Yeah. And apparently they haven't worked because he still needs someone else. Yeah. Second, the rulers of the synagogues, like the Pharisees, the religious people, didn't really like Jesus. So for him to come, and it says he came, fell at his feet and implored him earnestly. For Jairus to come beg for Jesus, I mean, he must have been desperate. He's like, I have no other hope. It's only Jesus. I mean, that's what his actions kind of show.
And with the woman with the issue of blood in verse 26, I mean, it says, and who had suffered much under many physicians and had spent all that she had. She sounds pretty desperate too. What elements of desperation would she have been in, Jake?
Yeah, so really just being a social outcast, because in Jewish culture, blood was unclean. You don't touch anybody who was unclean. Yeah. She was unclean, and so she was completely socially outcast. Didn't have really any contact with anybody, and here she comes because she's so desperate. She spent all of her money on doctors. She comes to Jesus, and he's marching with a crowd of people around him towards Jairus' house for Jairus' daughter, healer's daughter, and she interrupts that by just touching the garment, and it doesn't really interrupt it. Yeah. But just touches the garment, and Jesus is the one who ends up stopping.
So she had spent, the passage sounds like that physicians had done some experimental things even on her, just try to heal her and do whatever they could, suffered under many physicians. During ancient times, there were some crazy medical practices, and maybe there were some crazy things that she had to go through. She had suffered by the physicians. She had also been just financially broke. She was socially outcast. She was a religious outcast. She couldn't go to the temple. And so this lady was absolutely desperate. Jairus was desperate. And, these two desperate folks, they both come to Jesus. And they had exhausted all other options. Yeah. But where do they come to? Jesus. And what is that application for us today? I think probably the people that are listening to this, they're not as desperate in their circumstance as Jairus or this lady. But how does this apply to us?
Well, I think first, we've been given a ton of options. The world has options out there for us. And that's no surprise. The world has options for us. And then, like you said, circumstantially, we might not look on the outward as desperate as they are, but all of the options the world gives us don't actually fix why we're broken. We actually look like these people on the inside. Jesus is our only hope for sin. Right. I mean, sin will kill us aside from Jesus, and none of the world's options can fix that. Yeah. There's no doctor, there's no human strategy, there's no self-help plan, there's no 90-step program that fixes sin. It's only Jesus.
Right. And bouncing off that, it's really, we can choose how desperate we are for Jesus, really. Because really inside, that's our greatest need of our heart is intimate fellowship with God and Jesus and having that connection. But we can fill that with other things that don't completely satisfy us.
That's right.
And it's not our ultimate joy, because our ultimate joy comes from Jesus, but when we're filling it with so many other things, it's not as satisfying.
It's almost like we're that woman for 12 years, bouncing from physician to physician, spending all that we have, and like as soon as like, well, this thing will work, and then we realize like it didn't work. And I'm sure that's what this woman went through. And actually, like, we don't want to end up like that. We just come to Jesus.
But the amazing thing is Jesus isn't just an option among many. Jesus is the best option.
Yes.
He is, we could say he is the only option, but I want to put this in a better term. He is the best option. He is the one that actually gives peace to two very disturbed people. And that's what I want to move to next, is how does Jesus care for these people?
Yeah, he responds in grace and turning from the first situation, he follows Jairus to go heal his daughter, and he turns from that because this woman touched his garment. He stops the entire parade, turns and addresses her directly, and she was healed from it as well.
Right.
And then right after that, there's the disruption because somebody comes to Jairus and says, "Hey, your daughter actually just died."
Right.
He goes to his house and leans over and speaks to his daughter and heals her as well. Actually raises her from the dead, and it's pretty incredible.
So Jesus cared. Do you want to expound on that anymore, Drew?
Well, I was thinking, there's a whole verse 32. It's like a whole verse just devoted to Jesus, like piercing through all the cacophony of the crowd. Like, who did this? Like, who? Like, I want this person. I want to talk to this person. It's like Jesus like sorts through all the crowd, like to focus on this woman. And I was even thinking of, in the past two stories, Jesus is like portrayed as like this in control of the natural world. Like the witnesses obey him, demons obey him, but he's not just some lofty transcendent figure. He's very close, and he's very close to this woman. He's like, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." And then even when he goes to Jairus' house, he puts all the crowd aside, and it's almost like guys, this isn't about you. This is about Jairus. This is about Jairus' wife, Jairus' daughter. And Peter, James, and John, I just feel like they're kind of standing in the background while Jesus is having this really tender moment. And he walks up to the girl, and Jesus is actually speaking in Aramaic. Mark is writing in Greek, but Jesus is speaking in Aramaic. And Mark records the Aramaic words, but I feel it just captures like the tenderness that Jesus, not only does he see these people are desperate, but he's very personal. It's like one-on-one times, like looks straight into this girl and says, "Just rise, like daughter, rise." I think it's so cool.
So Jesus, as we have seen so often, he is sovereign. He is king. He's in control of the natural, the supernatural, all events. And we can hail him as king. But he is not a mean and unrelatable king. He cares.
Yes.
And he cares about even the people who are desperate, who have been kind of pushed off from society, and Jesus cares about them. And so our heart today is that you would see your desperate need, we would see our desperate need for Christ. And we would see him not as an option, but as the best option, because he is a good and loving and caring King Jesus. Well, with that, next week, where are we going to be, guys?
The 5,000 in chapter 6, Jesus feeding the 5,000, classic story. But there's always new things. Like, I've already gone over these stories before in my devotions, but like going back again, it's like Jesus is always speaking new things about himself that we can see.
Yeah.
Again.
Well, we look forward to doing that, and until next time, we'll see you then.